Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Call here teaching you how to use a Sling Psychrometer, which some of you will get a chance to use when you return to class. This is a device that can be used for two things. You can use it to figure out the dew point temperature. You can also use it to figure out relative humidity, and that's what we're going to focus on today. This is a basic instrument. It looks fancy, but all it really is two thermometers. Two thermometers that are on this swivel, and that can be spun in the air like this. Doesn't it look like fun, right? The difference between these two thermometers is one of them has a cloth tied around the end of it, and that's called the wet bulb thermometer because we get this wet with room temperature water, okay? It should have some moisture in it. The other one we call the dry bulb temperature because it should be, or the dry bulb thermometer because it should be dry, right? What happens is when we spin a Sling Psychrometer in the air, any water on the dry bulb temperature, there should be no water on the dry bulb temperature thermometer, but any water on this wet bulb thermometer should start to evaporate and go from a liquid into a gas. And when it does, it's going to pull energy from this thermometer. Very similar to how sweating and then the sweat evaporating off your skin causes your body temperature to drop. So as I spin the Sling Psychrometer, the temperature of the wet bulb thermometer will start to drop. And the dry bulb thermometer should stay the same. It should be unaffected by the spinning because the only thing that's changing the temperature is evaporating water off of the wet bulb temperature, right? What this gives us when we stop and when we read the actual thermometers, it gives us two temperatures. You should get one temperature for the wet bulb thermometer and one temperature for the dry bulb thermometer. And if there is any evaporation that takes place at all, those two temperatures should be different. The wet bulb will drop lower and the high bulb will stay as the higher temperature, okay? There is one instance where you can sling this all day and the temperatures will stay exactly the same. They stay the same if there's no evaporation happening here. And the only reason that no evaporation would happen on the wet bulb thermometer is the air is already totally saturated, 100% relative humidity. At 100% relative humidity, these two temperatures will read exactly the same. But in most cases, they won't be the same. All right? So when you come back to class, we'll teach you how to use this slide rule here in the front to figure out what the relative humidity is. But until then, you can take the temperature on the wet bulb thermometer and the temperature on the dry bulb thermometer and use a table that I'm posting in an assignment for you to work on today. And I will walk you through how to do that assignment in class today. And using those two temperatures, you can figure out the relative humidity of the air in this room or outside. This tool, believe it or not, in different forms, is what people will use if they fight wildfires out in California for sure, in areas where the weather is very dry. People that fight those fires will use a Sling Psychrometer to measure the relative humidity of the air, which is really, really low. It's a very low relative humidity. And that helps them understand how dry the air is and how much moisture is being pulled into or evaporated from the heat from that fire. So really interesting and useful tool for people out in nature, and it ties into weather for us as well. So head on over to the assignment now if you haven't been there already, and we'll show you how to use the wet bulb and dry bulb temperatures using a table to figure out the relative humidity of the air.